web series. The series of startup interviews. We're trying to do peer learning from different startups. Each startup has some good experiences and some good results in some of their endeavors. We're just trying to pick specific topics and then just kind of share it with other startups. And you've done very well topically right now with COVID and even otherwise in just being able to spot opportunities for AI in healthcare. So we'll pick your experiences today on that topic. So thanks for joining us. So before we get started, Abhishek, why don't you just take next few minutes and just describe the journey with RayD8.
Right now is the key because everyone is isolated. So we'd definitely like to share as much as we can, and I hopefully am able to cover not just opportunities in healthcare. I think so now post-corona world will have new opportunities, new billion-dollar markets built up, and rather than traditional big industries, I think so startups should be more quick and agile to take up all these opportunities. So I hopefully am able to cover more of these things in these talks.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're right. The whole world is changing right beneath our feet. So we need to do things differently going forward. Absolutely. So we'll get some of your insights on that as well. To get started, Abhishek, when just in the next couple of minutes, just describe the journey. How did you think of how did the whole idea for RayD8 come up, and what's been the journey like in the last 2 years?
Yeah, so the whole idea of RayD8 came up when we were trying to sort of look at diabetes as a disease. Me and a couple of my friends, we were with very complementary skill sets, and we've been discussing for some time that we should be doing something which really matters, or is we are personally a little connected to it. So one thing that connected all of us was our parents had diabetes, and we had seen some of the problems firsthand. That's when the whole idea of RayD8 was born, to come up with some kind of healthcare innovations where we could target some specific segment of diabetes, which is a condition, not a disease. That's when we sort of looked at what is the first disease which is an outcome of diabetes, and it came out to be eye care. And then there were more startling facts which came out in front of us, wherein we realized almost 1/3 of the world's blind people are in India. And a lot of almost 80% of this blindness is preventable with early detection. And partly this is because the tier 2 and tier 3 cities did not have access to quality doctors, or even a doctor for that matter. It wasn't about those machines, because in government colleges and other places, there are machines, but no doctor present at that time. And they might miss out on science if they're not specialists of that disease. So we figured that technology could pitch in certain gaps and could find out or triage people in mass public screening efforts to sort of locate who needs to be sent in front of a doctor. So initial efforts were towards that side, and slowly we started figuring out if we can also come out with low-cost hardware which could support such innovation, and such AI could be sitting on top of IoT-driven low-cost hardware, which is internet connected and edge enabled, which could be used in a handheld manner. And that's where we started iterating on the hardware side of it. And we've made a lot of progress on the software side of it. In multiple testings, we have seen the performance match up to a super specialist level on the AI side. And on the hardware side, we are able to come up with a design which is looking at a low-cost handheld model, which should be sub 1 lakh, which is almost 1/5 to 1/10 the international and national competitors' price. So that's where our journey mostly has been around eye care till now.
And you start off with diabetic screening, diabetic retinopathy, and then pivoted few times. So what were the observations that you kind of made, or that you noticed as you started talking to hospitals and others, that you spotted this opportunity? I mean, how did you spot those opportunities? Because you made 3-4 clear pivots, though they all related to eye care. So how did you spot those opportunities?
I think so. Opportunities, you really have to go out and start trying to sell what you already have as like a minimum sellable product. And unless someone is ready to buy it, you don't have a minimum sellable product. So our initial idea was that world will change when we have this AI which can sort of predict if there is diabetic retinopathy or not. And we were trying to sell it to an eye doctor, and he was giving us a straight face like, why would I use it? I'm an eye doctor. Why would I need an AI to tell me what I already know? So it was what value does it add? How does it value? In what form? Like if it is just a yes or no AI, or does it need to be put in a format where a patient could be given a written PDF? So it took us a lot of iteration, traveling to a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities, meeting doctors in places where they don't have access to qualified eye care professional in their vicinities. And that's when we realized that, okay, this would make more sense. So by the time we were only limited to, we were working with, in fact, one of our founders is a retinal surgeon. So even though we were claiming to have all the expertise in-house and all the insights from the circle of friends on the WhatsApp groups that we had made, until unless we stepped out, we didn't understand that no one was willing to offend us with the reality of certain things which taught us the most to make and iterate our models, which would essentially go on to be accepted commercially and operationally. So that's where the insights came. The second thing was always to be in touch with research outside India, to follow the academia. I think so. One of the best things is to read out the top papers coming out from academic institutions. There is a wealth of knowledge. You don't need to be enrolled in an MIT to understand what professors and top researchers over there are sort of researching on. You could read those papers and understand if that application will make sense. And that is very important. Not everything makes sense to every geography. So we started following those, and that's when we were able to sort of take from a smaller data set level research to a bigger data set, which makes sense in terms of reproducibility in a larger local geographic manner. So that's where we had more learning. So a couple of these things.
So your earlier pivots were all around eye care, right? Start off with
Right,
diabetes and switch to other related areas, broader eye care. But what you're
right,
doing now is completely kind of, though medical, but completely unrelated to eye. What you've
right,
started to do with COVID, and this may
right.
open up a completely new channel beyond even COVID. So how did this come
Exactly.
up? I mean, what did you notice, and where do you see the need that you decide to do this with X-rays?
Sure. So when we were into eye care, we started working on diabetic retinopathy. Then we went a little deeper into a host of other conditions. Then we started seeing technologies that we could come up with innovations where we produce 3D level biomarkers, which is like of a optical coherence tomography, optical CT scan from a 2D fundus machine. So a host of research was going towards that side, which is already in data collection and data clinical validation side. While one of our investigators for the eye care, he's part of AIMS Jodhpur. And recently, over past 1.5 months, whenever we've been talking to different doctors in different cities, they have been painting a very grim picture about COVID and lack of resources in terms of testing, the false negatives they've been getting in terms of the existing testing kits, and not having availability to it. There was some sort of even I could sense a little bit of trepidation inside the doctors, which is they're at the forefront of warriors. If they are afraid of something, there's something that we all need to do. So that's when they started asking that, is there something that could be immediately done? And they assured us that there are a couple of doctors who have discussed internally, the HOD of their radiology, their pulmonology head, and they had a few suggestions and then seen early research is happening, which even we were aware of. And that's when we decided that there could be something looked at, and we had been in touch with more researchers in other places. So that's when we came out about a solution to look at multiple data points. And since we had been working into medical imaging AI, and we've been looking at multiple data points from different perspectives, we thought of sort of looking at inputs from imaging, radiological imaging, which presents visual features which could be either indicators or contraindicators about presence or absence for sure of a disease. We also started collecting features about medical symptoms and medical comorbidities. And apart from that, we started seeing early signs about voice as an input regards vis-a-vis their cough, their speech, their breathing pattern in itself. And a combination of all these at a very early stage is producing better results than any of these technologies taken alone. And by now, this has become pretty much in collaboration of almost 15 to 20 institutions with multiple aims being involved. And we are expecting this to go on to become a 50 to 100 medical institution collaboration. It's a not-for-profit initiative. And yes, the research would transcend beyond COVID post this, because there are other areas that we've got some pediatricians who have come and told us that they think so that a baby crying, they can understand, the nurses, the top pediatricians can understand the baby crying, if it is crying because it's unhealthy, if it is crying because it wants food, if it is crying if it's got fever. So there are so many new areas to different aspects of this research which might come out. But the immediate deliverable goal we are looking at is a system which could identify, at least help screen or triage COVID-19 patients. And hopefully we are able to produce early clinical results by June for this whole research area around COVID.
That's quite exciting. And then, like, we've been talking about the whole national data set initiative. So I think we will
Right.
hopefully help in some way, maybe on help amplify and accelerate. Now, once you spotted, like, say, if you take COVID, whenever 6 weeks back or 8 weeks back, once you spotted that there was a possibility, and like this is comes place into one of your strength areas, which is medical images, even though unrelated to what you're doing earlier, but medical images is strength. What did you
Right.
do next? I mean, once you spotted the opportunity, because here the reaction time is very, very, very critical,
Exactly. Right.
very quickly. So
Right.
once you spotted, what are the next set of things you did?
So the first thing we did was to connect with experts to understand the feasibility. We did our own a level of research on to online papers, but they were done on such a small, limited data, and at such a small interval, it's difficult to look at what academic research could be taken further. So we started talking to experts, in this case being radiologists, looking at thoracic imaging of X-ray and CT scans, and we started talking to pulmonologists to understand if they've visually or in person looked at patients, and they've actually seen patterns in terms of their voice, speech, breathing, and all this. And we had to make a lot of let's say our own hypothesis around building this. So it was about reaching out to as many let's say medical experts. Then we reached out to Professor Jayanti at IIIT Hyderabad. We had a good breakdown session with her to understand the medical imaging nuances of the X-rays and what could be done in terms of the advice that we had gotten, and the sort of what amount of data sets and other things we have to look at in terms of if we have to make models and what could be iterated. We discussed a host of publications and what could be done in terms of reducing false negative, what could be done to do models at scale from smaller data sets. So it was reaching out to as many experts as possible. Another thing that we did was to sort of make this a not-for-profit initiative, because it would make connecting with as many as government institutions possible. So at the one time, we started connecting with the medical institutions. The second part, we started connecting with the technology institutions, people who have had years and years of expertise. But at the same time, we also started directly connecting with district level health officials, so that this could be directly implemented, and it doesn't take a lot of time. So we already started a communication challenge with different state task forces. So we have already established contact with 4 to 5 states task forces, so that whenever our solution is ready, it's very easy to disburse the solution. There's already scientific evidence. We have also registered the overall clinical trial and validation with the ICMR, and we got approval for it. So as soon as we've done everything in the right manner, acceptable and implemented and executionable at different levels. So that was the approach we took to sort of solve this. I also reached out to a lot of entrepreneurs who have been working in speech. Multiple of them I've had interaction with at Avishkar IIIT. So we are also, I also reached out to a lot of fellow entrepreneurs into voice and imaging AI side technology, and they've been also sharing their insights as to what could be different iteration and let's say different technologies to be let's say tried out in these medical experiments, which could produce some kind of better results and increase the efficiency of our algorithms.
So yeah, I think that makes sense. I think especially in something like this where speed is of essence, leveraging what's already there is I think very, very key. So now before we conclude, Abhishek, from all your experiences in the past and especially now in this last 2 years at last 2 years at RayD8, what would be one growth factor, right? If you can share from your experiences to other startups, one growth hack tip that you would share.
All right. So the growth hack tip is exactly like be that person who understands because investors like to follow the people who can change according to the trends of the market. If the market or the consumers are going to change, if the world is going to move towards telemedicine, you should be moving towards the telemedicine. If there's going to be, let's say, post-corona world is going to be more towards home-based things with less of socializing outside, you should be let's say fast enough to look at an amalgamation of either IoT, which can accumulate a lot of data at home of consumers for any kind of personal or medical applications, and build solutions on top of that, predict sort of what would happen in the future, and start building according to it. One tip definitely is it is easier to make something and prove it rather than trying to take permission from 10 different corners. So be fast, be agile, fail fast, but be fast. That's the main part. And don't quit. There is going to be one good day. Stay alive till that one good day when it's your day. I'd say that to my fellow entrepreneurs.
I think that's so well put. You're absolutely right. Opportunities come, but when opportunities come, you can't take your own time because
Right.
the opportunity has its shelf life. Somebody will crack it.
Right.
So, and there's no way you can be too sure exactly what all is needed. So you have to fail fast. So start doing something quickly. Go check it out, learn from it, and then keep iterating, but do it very fast. I think it's a very, very apt tip. So Abhishek, thank you so much for taking time. You're one of those startups that have got hyper busy given the opportunity you spotted during COVID. And so thanks for taking the time off, and all the very
Thank you
best.
so much for supporting us. We've got a lot of support, so it's our duty to sort of give back to fellow entrepreneurs because we've received so much from entrepreneurship ecosystem like IIITH. So we would definitely any day be there to give back to our fellow entrepreneurs through any medium, especially through yours.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. I think we greatly appreciate that. It's a collective ecosystem, like you rightly put. So thanks, and then like we will continue talking. All the best,
Right.
Abhishek. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye bye. Take care.